Welcome back to Tetrakan Super Monoblock. Let's make a track with this Portastudio 424 Mark II. The idea was that it's grey and chonky, so I would record Panthro's theme from Thundercats. It's going to be a shortened version of Panthro's theme, and it's an interpretation rather than a note for note, try and recreate the same sound type of a cover, trying to bring in some elements of Turkish funk, because I've been listening to this Turkish funk playlist on Apple Music for the last while, so I'm going to have some stinking cheesy combo organ and funk drumming and so on in there. One of the things I want to demonstrate is bouncing, sometimes called ping pong recording. And if you really want to make the best of that process, then a little bit of planning can help. You can keep on bouncing or ping pong recording loads and loads of times, but you're going to lose treble, lose fidelity each time you do it. I think 2 re-recordings is probably the maximum that we want to do. By bouncing some signals twice, then we can get up to 8 overdubs. In my case, I'm going to be bouncing some of the signals, the drum microphones, more than once. I'm going to end up with 8 passes. So excuse my handwriting, the fact that it's extra hard to read because I'm using a thick Sharpie. I just want to make sure I used a pen that was legible for the camera. For the purposes of this diagram, if it's a circled number, then it's a step, an overdub, and if it's an uncircled number, then I'm talking about tape tracks. So on my first take, what I'm going to be doing is recording a kick drum microphone to track 1, a snare microphone to track 2, and a room microphone to track 3. And step 2 is I'm going to bounce all 3 of those tracks in a mono mix to track 4. Then my third step is going to be to record bass onto track 2. Obviously I'm going to be overwriting the snare that was previously on there, and I'm going to be recording some percussion to track 3, overwriting the room mic signal that was originally there. Then I'm going to take all 3 of those, the bass, the percussion and the mono drums mix, bouncing all of them in step 5 onto track 1, thus overwriting the kick drum signal that was originally there. That's going to give us a picture like this, where I've got some kind of balance of drums and percussion and bass in mono on track 1 of the recorder. Then I can delete over the old information in tracks 2, 3 and 4. The order that I'm probably going to do them, though the order doesn't really matter, is guitar onto track 2, combo organ onto track 3 and Rhodes piano onto track 4. So at that point I'm going to have, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things going on, but bear in mind that the drum kit is actually 3 instruments really, because I've captured the sound of it, or I'm planning to capture the sound of it with 3 microphones. So you can get 8 different instruments onto a 4-track recorder using ping pong recording and a little bit of planning without too much degradation of the sound. Right, first step in the process, going to record these drums. Just show you what's happening here. Excuse the shadows and poor lighting. You can see I've got tracks 1, 2 and 3 set to direct mode, so the pan pop position isn't making any bearing on the gain structure in this mode. Channel 4 isn't safe, I'm not recording anything to it. This channel is the kick drum, this channel is the snare, and that's a room microphone. Faders are all in the greyed out area that shows unity gain. That's the room mic. It's a Preciso mic that I've got mounted to the wall. Bought it because they're pretty cheap and it meant I didn't have to buy a stand. It requires phantom power. It's getting that via this little battery powered box. You can see by the way that I'm using the 1/4" jack inputs, it just so happens, you know, having worked with a lot of Tascam 244s that have mainly got cables that terminate in 1/4" jack. Actually, am I talking bullshit? Yeah, look, I've got adapters there. Maybe I will use the XLR inputs for these. I mean, I don't really have any noise problems, so having balanced cables not going to make that big of a difference. For what I'm doing here, I'm not too worried about positioning the microphone absolutely beautifully. The distance and the little bit of air that you capture with a microphone, it can be a bit like moving the eyedropper around in Photoshop and getting exactly the shade of pink you want, but I'm just going to point it roughly at the snare. So I'm going for quite a rough and ready approach here, and then kick drum mic. I mean, it's just large-ish diaphragm dynamic mic. It's just sitting on top of a dressing gown inside the kick drum. Just to pick up the contact. I'm not sure how loud I'll actually have that mixed in. It's not especially well tuned. I don't really know how to tune drum kits very well, so... Right, that's your background information. I'll set this camera up and do some takes. recorded the drums, a couple of things happened off camera. I realised that during the take that I did when I was filming myself playing the drums, that I'd left the DBX off. I want to have it on. So I redid the drums. The take you hear is the first take that I did, and I like to do these things in one take if I possibly can. You know, if the mistakes aren't too egregious, and I will just try and do things somewhat spontaneously. However, the record levels on this had drifted a bit. I've turned up the record amps a little bit using the trim pots on the lower board, but the signals going to tape were a little bit quieter than I might have liked. It's difficult when you're being your own engineer to get everything just right. And the way I had this sat in relation to where I was sitting on the drums, I couldn't really see the meters properly. Ideally, I would like the kick mic and the snare mic to be bursting above 0, so I'm getting a little bit of tape saturation, a little bit of thwack, a little bit of compression on those two microphones. I'm not sure that I am. Never mind. What I'm going to be doing now is bouncing those 3 microphone signals down to the 4th channel, along with a little bit of reverb that I've got set up in this Line 6 M9 Stompbox modeler. I've got a plate reverb completely wet that's going out of effects end 1 and returning on channel 5-6. Before I show you how everything is set up and in order to accomplish that bounce, I'll just show you what's happening with the EQ on the 3 different microphones. Before I go any further, I should just say any audio you're hearing at the moment is my camera microphone picking up these Alesis monitors that are just out of shot there. They're pretty much the cheapest powered monitors on the market, so you can imagine the sound quality that you're hearing isn't necessarily representative. I will publish the completed track separately with the audio captured digitally, so there's no loss of quality from small speakers to not great microphones and all that. So here's the kick drum mic. If I take my EQ off, that's how it sounds. So it actually sounds better with the EQ off if you're just listening to the isolated track, but I want to think about the roles that the different microphones have. So I don't want too much of the snare or cymbals to come through, and that's why I'm pulling down the high end, and also there's a little bit of flabbiness to the low end, so I'm pulling the low end a little bit. So really it's the smack of the beater head against the skin is the main thing that I'm hearing. If we play the snare mic, you can hear there's quite a bit of high end from the cymbals there, that's fine. But you can see I've actually got all 3 of these controls turned way down. Here's what it sounds like if I don't have those turned way down. Hear that terrible middly ring? This is me compensating for, frankly, not very good microphone placement and not very good setup of the drum before I recorded. I probably should have tuned it, probably should have put some moon gel or something on there to dampen that ring. The nature of the microphone is it's on a plastic clip, so you really, apart from the angle with which the microphone points at the skin, you don't have that much control. If I were to take more time over it, use a stand that is independent of the position of the snare rim, then I could probably get a better result. But sometimes if you're trying to capture ideas quickly, then you're going to end up with a bad mic signal. And so this is where EQ is important. You can get rid of that ringing and get the crack and the attack of mainly the snare, but also the cymbals as well. So like that. That's the sound of the Pressure Zone microphone that's attached to my wall behind the drum kit. If I turn the EQ flat again for a second, you can hear that actually quite a bit of the kick drum is coming through onto that microphone as well. Could leave that in depending what you wanted to do. I'm going for more of a 70s funk sound. I want to leave quite a lot of space for the bass guitar when it comes in. I found that this blend is about right. Now the reverb, you can see the way I've got it set up. A little bit of the sound of the two close mics is being sent to the reverb, but I'm sending as much as possible of the reverb on this Effect One send to the room mic. So if I introduce this plate reverb, somebody made a good video about how the sound of spring reverbs and plate reverbs place the recording in a mythic space, because it sounds a bit like natural reverb, but it's also this other thing that you really only hear in records. Some people are going to hate that, but I'm quite happy with it for my purposes. So in terms of bouncing this, what I need to do is have all 4 of those channels set to tape, and then track 4, I need to arm that going to bus right, and then I need to turn the pan control on those 3 to right. And then if I just rewind that back again, so again I'm using my memory button to get back there. It's only coming out of this speaker now, but were I to hit record, then the right bus on this meter is showing me what channel 4 would get. What I want to do is turn up the high end for channel 4 a little bit, just because I'm going to lose some high end as I bounce. And actually it's quite a toppy drum sound on purpose, but I want to add a little bit of high end so it's not too dull after being bounced. Because these are being panned right, then you're only hearing the reverberation on that right bus anyway, so it's definitely going to go to the tape. So if I hit return to 0, I already reset the counter at the very beginning of the recording, and hit record and play, then these 3 signals and the reverberation that's being sent via these controls to this reverb unit and back through this pot are going to end up on track 4. So now if I turn these channels off, make sure there's no effects in there, return to 0, RTZ stands for return to 0, I should be able to hear what's on track 4. Anyway, you're going to hear plenty of that as I continue to make this video, so success. We now have the reverb and all 3 mics on this channel. We can proceed to erase this stuff with new material. So I'm going to move on to the bass guitar. I'm all set up for bass at the moment. I've got the Alesis monitors plugged into my monitor output. So monitor output is the same thing that you hear in the headphones. I'm not hearing the left and right bus in my monitor anymore because I've turned those switches off. But I've set Effect 2 to a tape cue. So you can see I've got the bass up a bit and I've got the drums all the way up. That gives me a balance. I'm not recording at the moment, obviously. Etc. The sound of the bass, it's going through this Joyo AC tone. It's meant to sound like a Vox AC30, I think, but it works quite well as a sort of substitute bass amp. And then on the Line 6 M9, I've got, I think it's the simulation of the MXR compressor, just at the minimum setting, level all the way up, compression at minimum. It just takes some of the spikes and volume that you get off the low strings on the bass, tames them a little bit, because that can do funny things to the DBX on these. And then it's going into, it wasn't actually on before, but there's a little bit of spring reverb on there, just to blend it with the plate reverb that's on the drums. I'm going to be setting track 2 to direct mode, and mic line input. Track 4 that's got all drums on it is on tape. Tracks 3 and 1 are off. So I'm erasing over the material that was originally on track 2, which was the snare drum close mic. I'll set up the camera in a minute just so you can see me playing it. Bass recording went fine. No hands. The sound of it on tape. So on this track 3, I'm gonna record some percussion. I've got a drawer full of miscellaneous percussion things and Majorca souvenir characa. What is that? I don't know. I've got this little cuss of egg. Is that a kalimba? I don't even know. But I can hear some sort of application for them, and it's going to be the same process. All the tracks are going to be safe, except track 3's in direct mode. I'll be monitoring it using the tape cue so that the way I balance what I'm playing along with what I'm listening back to during tracking doesn't affect the gain structure that's going to tape. That's the reason to monitor it from this row here rather than out the line out and using the fader levels. Excuse the handheld footage, it's just that this microphone stand is what I normally attach the camera to with this contraption. So you can see I've got the microphone plugged into the M9, got that MXR based compression and then a little bit of plate reverb. Going into channel 3, play some of it back. You hear that there's this maraca thing there. Probably gonna sit about that level. Pull down the master fader so that I'm only occasionally getting the red light on track 1, since that's where I'm going to be bouncing these 3 down to. You hear that kalimba there? Probably just sit about there in the mix. I hope you could hear a different tone of shaker at the end there. What I'm trying to do now is take the bass, the percussion and the blended drum mics. I'm going to bounce all 3 of them onto track 1, and that's going to sit in the centre of my finished mix, and then I can record over tracks 2, 3 and 4 with Rhodes piano, combo organ and guitar. Not necessarily in that order, I haven't decided what order I'm recording it, but at that point we're going to have 8 tracks of stuff. I don't really want tape saturation on this bounce. I've already had some saturation in the other bounce. You can see I've got this high EQ up so it doesn't become duller, but I don't want it to be too quiet because then it'll be hissy, but then I don't want it to go into the red too much. So I'm going to do a couple of rehearsal playthroughs off camera and then I'll record again once I'm actually ready to do that bounce. Okay, I think the levels are all about right. So safe mode, safe mode, safe mode, bus left. These tracks are all panned left. Everything's set to tape. That means that these 3 tracks are going to bounce to track 1. The fader level for that doesn't matter. I'm going to be adjusting the level of this to get the percussion right because the introductory percussion needs to be a lot quieter than the later stuff. Here we go. Turn that to safe, turn it to 0, then everything we've recorded should now be sitting in mono on track 1. Set this EQ flat again. Hopefully you can hear that moving around in response to if I turn that fader down. So just listen in case there's anything bad that's happened during the bounce. It's okay, I think probably the bass is slightly too loud, so I'm just going to redo that off screen. You can assume that when we come back, what I'm working with is pretty much the same process, but I've turned that bass down very slightly. I've just recorded some combo organ It's quite a heavy thing, so I took the Porta Studio to it rather than it to the Porta Studio. I'm telling you that because I don't have any speakers hooked up to this, so I can't play you what I just recorded, but I can show you the setup. eBay score maybe £30–40 for this combo organ. It's got a speaker out which is going into the M9 again. I'm using the Tube Screamer setting at the minimum distortion with the tone control open, so it's just giving it a little bit of drive. So if I just quickly give this a play, wonder if you can hear there's especially that, there's a little, it cuts out sometimes, so there's a little bit of that in the recording, but I think that adds to the shitty authenticity of what I'm doing. When it's going through the Screamer, it's got a slightly more John Lord quality to it, although I suppose this sort of sounds more of a Surf Doors kind of sound, transistor organ. And yeah, Spring Reverb again. And then the output of that was going to input 2. I'm using the tape cues again to get my monitoring level while recording. Again, that is so that I can change the balance of what I'm listening back to during tracking without affecting the gain structure that's going to tape. Managed to get it all in one go. I'm amusing myself by doing a thing in it, which I think is meant to sound like the roar in Thundercats. That's what's happening in my tiny mind anyway. I've just tracked the Rhodes piano. What I've got here is Rhodes MK80. I think it's like a form of FM synthesis it uses to produce its sounds, but I mean, it sounds pretty authentic. It's going through PV Renown 400. I don't know if you can even see that, it's so dark, but that's just a quite a nasty sounding transistor amplifier with quite a nice spring reverb in it, so it's distorting the sound slightly. And hopefully you can just about see that I've got the same cheap microphone that I had on the kick drum and the percussion pointing at the centre of the cone of one of the two 12-inch speakers there. And that's going into channel 3 on the 424. Again, there's no nearby speakers for me to monitor the process of me recording. Because I'm using a microphone, I wouldn't really want to do it that way anyway, in case the sound of the speakers bled into the microphone. But you can see I had track 3 armed in direct mode. That fader was in the grey area while I was tracking. Microphone again turned up about halfway, and then I was monitoring using the effect to set to tape cue. Listening through just a pair of monitors here. So at this point, track 1 contains the drums, percussion and bass guitar. Track 2 contains the combo organ. Track 3 contains the Rhodes piano. So track 4 is left for guitar. Final layer of overdubbing about to happen. I'm back in the room where I've got these little powered monitors, so you'll be able to hear me do the recording. On guitar, EGC Traverse Beam 500 type of guitar. I've got a George Lynch wah. It doesn't look like a George Lynch wah because I've got skateboard grip on it because I don't like the dragon graphic. This is a little Fuzzdog kit I built and painted. It's I'll put the name of the fuzz on up on screen. I can't remember the name of it. It's like the one that's on all the Stooges records and Iron Butterfly and so on. Mild crunch sounding Fender sort of tone from this American sound, and then I'm just using the M9 again for a bit of spring reverb. Recording's finished. I've just captured the output onto this Zoom H6 cheap lead coming out of the line out into there. So I'll separately publish a digital capture from the output of the 424. Just to remind you again, what you're hearing is coming from my little monitors off screen here. They're plugged in via the line out, this cable here. Drums, percussion and bass are here. There's the combo organ. And here's the guitar. And if we put together kind of a blend. Bounced materials in the centre, the organs off to that side. Guitar's a little bit closer to the organ, and the Rhodes piano's on the opposite side. I won't go through the rationale of every channel, but you can see I've made very subtle adjustments to the EQ just so that the different tracks sort of like sit in relation to each other better. And obviously at this point, whether these signals are being sent to monitor doesn't make any difference because I'm not listening to it by headphone socket anymore or from these monitor outputs here. All these channels are set to tape, so the faders control the levels, the pans are controlling where those signals are being put into the stereo bus. The record function switches are all set to safe, so that's appropriate settings for mixdown. I hope you found that useful if you're getting to grips with one of these. And yeah, like I say, look out for the digital capture of the recording that I made as part of this tutorial. You know, it's rough around the edges, I don't mind that. Some people might, you know, there's definitely points where there's an accumulation of under-rehearsed first and second takes. My attention being split between trying to make the video and trying to play the music, so it's not perfect, but not apologising that much for the results. I still think it sounds kind of cool, fun for me to do. Anyway, thanks for watching, hope to see you again, bye.